thank you for that question and for the offer, I think, that's implicit in helping to do that. You know, I've actually spoken with the head of, I think, almost every regional association of grant makers around the country in the last 6 weeks or so. Shared an advanced draft of the criteria with them and said, let's figure out some ways to partner together. The regional associations often have the best connection to their members, and so, you know, I think it's going to be different in every region that we go to, but we need to figure out what the programming is that's going to be useful, that's going to be helpful, that's going to help people engage with these issues and move the needle and do better. Anybody else have a thought on that, Dave? Judy?
Well, I would just add that there are many models of how to do some of these principles that are scattered across the country. And I think one step would be to talk with some of those folks about how they got to where they are, what their rationale was. And there are other ones who are kind of considering these things and sort of saying, talk to us about your internal process. How is that going? Each section of the full book has some discussion questions, for example, as ways to start that conversation.
Yes, ma'am. Woman at the back. Thanks.
Hi, I'm Tamar Lloyd from the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights. The only question I have is about measuring your impact. So do you all have a stated goal that you would like to see? So in 5 years, you know, NCRP wants to see this many foundations or this percentage of foundations really having some measurable change in the way that they're doing their grant making.
We're very close to having that. We have goals that say we want to see more funders doing these things. We haven't said sort of how many more or how much we want each percentage to go up, but obviously one of the benefits of having some clear and concrete measurable benchmarks like this is that we will be able to see, are we having an impact over time, and is grant making behavior changing and evolving and improving. And I think the way that would be shown is if we repeat the analysis a few years from now using a 3-year average, are a greater percentage of grant makers meeting or exceeding the criteria?
Yes, sir.
Thanks, Ian Storr from Mobilize.org. I'm glad to see the section on advocacy and civic engagement. I was wondering if you have any recommendations on how funders should be engaging with grassroots networks of advocates and people who are coming up in the last couple of years who aren't from the institutional side of advocacy, just with the new model of organizing.
Sure. We fund a lot of community organizing, and we're encouraging those networks to engage with NCRP to learn the tests, to learn the criteria, and to invite those who are already engaged with them as funders to apply those to themselves. We're going to also encourage folks to be participants with us in the accountability process. When we go to the Washington Association of Grantmakers annual meeting and present on this, we want to bring along grassroots organizations who can talk about what difference it makes for these criteria to be met, what difference in the real world. And that direct engagement with philanthropy, I believe, is a more honest relationship. We are actually all in this together, and improving our practices benefits us all.
Yes, I can't see over there. Yeah.
Lenny Magida from Association of Small Foundations, and our definition of small refers to few or no staff rather than to asset size. And my question has to do with whether in compiling your data, whether you were able to track any differences overall in small foundations versus larger foundations meeting or exceeding your criteria.
Not really. You know, the Foundation Center data, which we relied on for several of these, doesn't include very many small foundations, and where it does, we didn't separate out, are the large ones doing more or less than the small ones. We have some past work that suggests, but we certainly aren't going to say that it's proven, but when you look in Minnesota Foundation Center data versus the Minnesota Council on Foundations data, Minnesota Council's data, slightly different methodology, so it's hard to compare them, but it suggests that the smaller grant makers are giving even less to marginalized communities than the larger grant makers in Minnesota. But again, let me be clear, we're not making that statement that we know that to be true. It's just the one place where we've had the ability to compare some numbers where it suggests that it might be true. We'd actually love to work with you guys to get a more robust data set because some of the stories that I've heard, certainly there are many tremendous and excellent small foundations that are efficient and responsive and doing great work. So,
just as a follow-up, I sit on the board of a small foundation. One of the things that may be happening, however, is that it seems that small foundations, as the stock market losses mount, are cutting back much more severely in terms of their percentage of giving. And this is a concern. They're afraid of disappearing. And that seems to create a panic reaction that does seem to be happening and is of concern.
We've had a few conference calls and surveys of our members. We have more than 3,000 members nationwide since last September, basically. And while I wouldn't deny that what you say is happening, we've also had a number of our members tell us that now is not the time to stop funding. Now is the time when our grantees need us the most. And if we spend ourselves out sooner than we intended, so be it.
Yeah, very good.
Okay. Yes, ma'am. The corner over there.
Patricia Pasquale with the Foundation Center here in Washington, D.C., and also a member of the Project Streamline Advisory Committee. Did you look at the original findings of Project Streamline? Are you going to be working with them? Because they're advancing many of the same recommendations you are, and we've wrestled with the questions of how to meet the criteria. I mean, how do you know if you made a difference 5 years down the road?
Sure. We cite the project streamlining data all throughout this book. It was extremely useful to us, and it's incredible work that's really going to advance the important things in the sector. So, yeah.
Next question. Yes, sir.
Miles Wilson with the Dorothy Johnson Center for Philanthropy and Nonprofit Leadership. I was struck by Congressman Becerra's comments about the potential of the sector to lead in innovation, but it occurred to me that what's required with innovation is a real need for risk capital. And my concern, I guess, is that too often nonprofit investments end up, the good investment ends up getting defined as a safe investment. And so I'm wondering, and I haven't read this report, but I look forward to taking a look at it. I'm wondering if you deal at all with that issue in talking about some of the criteria that you've outlined in the report, and what counsel, if any, that you might provide to the philanthropic sector about risk management in the midst of leading on social and community innovation.
Yeah, that's a really important issue, Miles, and we talk about risk at several points throughout the report. It's hugely important, and if foundations can't be risk takers, who can? So yeah, we have always been and still are with this report huge proponents of foundations taking well thought through risks to advance important issues.
Just quickly, and I've been a fan and have read any number of the publications you all have put out in the past few years, at least. It seems to me this issue of risk management may be at the center of what you're trying to accomplish. I think it's getting defined differently.